Good morning and welcome to Rose Red Homestead, where we focus on self-reliance, food security, and emergency preparedness. And we wish to welcome all of those of you who are new subscribers. We're getting a lot of new folks. Thank you so much for joining our wonderful community. I think you'll be very happy here. We are a kind, wonderful group. So today we are going to do canning salmon for beginners, and this goes to emergency preparedness as well as food security, and actually it hits self-reliance as well. So this is what it looks like, the finished product. This is a pint of salmon that I canned in November of 21, so it's almost 3 years old. And we are using the USDA, University of Georgia, the National Center for Home Food Preservation recipe. It is called fish and pints only. And so we can only can fish in pint jars. Now, these are the types of fish that will work with this recipe: blue, mackerel, salmon, steelhead, trout, and other fatty fish except tuna. If you are wanting to can tuna, that is a separate recipe which is also in this collection. I will be putting the link to this particular recipe. It's just a quick one-page printout. It is so simple. The link will be below the description of this video, so you can click on it and see. It gives instructions for starting with a whole fish, maybe one that you've caught yourself. Now, we don't have a source for whole salmon here where we live, so we purchase the fillets. So a lot of the cleaning and scraping the scales off, getting rid of the tail and the head, that's been already done for us. But Jim watches for really good buys on salmon, and when he can find them, he gets about 5 pounds. That's what this is, about 5 pounds. And so we will be doing about 5 pints. It's about 1 pound that fits in here, but I have 6 jars ready just in case. The great thing is the ease of canning salmon. It is perfect for beginners. A lot of times meats are much easier than are other fruits and vegetables. And so that is the case with this fish, and we're going to be doing salmon. So because I am slanting this video toward beginners, and it also will be a really great review for those of you that may not have ever canned salmon before or have not canned it for a long time. We will be going into a little bit more detail than I usually do in favor of beginners who always have just lots of questions. Now, the canner that I'm going to be using today is my standard Presto stovetop canner. Now, the thing of it is, this is aluminum, and I have an induction cooktop, and aluminum will not work. It just won't heat up on an induction range. And so we'll be going outside to our back patio where Jim has fixed me a really nice canning center out there, and we'll be using our camp stove. It is important for you to check the elevation where you live, know what that is, so that you will know how many pounds pressure you need to use. Now, one thing that is a little bit different when we are canning fish as compared to meat is that fish, like this salmon, needs to be processed in pints only and for 100 minutes. And that's a little bit longer than the processing times for regular meat. So, as a beginning canner, or as a good review, we're just going to quickly check our canner to be sure everything is in order. So looking at the lid, I'm going to look at the gasket, be sure that it's clean underneath. I always put it away clean underneath so I know that it is nice and clean. I'm going to look through this little hole right here for the vent. So it's this vent right here that we will ultimately be putting our weight on, but I look through that to be sure I can see daylight to make sure that it is not blocked. And then mine is a dial canner, and so the elevation, according to the recipe, since we live at 5,000 feet, they give me a range between 4,000 and 6,000 feet. We need to process this at 13 pounds pressure. 13 pounds pressure would be the minimum. We can bounce that between 13 and 15 and still be safe. What has to happen is it must maintain 13 or above. If it dips below 13, then we have to start counting the processing time all over again. And so we're pretty vigilant in watching because we don't want to start that 100 minutes all over again. So it looks like everything is okay here. On the inside of the canner, I have the weight right here. Now, this is not a weighted gauge. It doesn't have a 10-pound or a 15-pound demarcation on this weight. But according to the book and my own testing, actually, the instruction book, this is a 15-pound weight, and I'll tell you why that is really cool in just a moment. I happen to have 2 racks, so I can double stack pints if I'm going to be doing a really big batch, but I'm not today. My batch will only be 1 layer deep, and so I'm leaving only 1 rack in place. And we will be putting about 2 inches of water in the bottom of this canner, and all during the processing time, that water will be producing steam. And at the beginning of the processing, which I'll show you when we get out there, we turn the burner up on high to let it really boil so that steam pours out of this vent. And we let it go for 10 minutes while it is venting just steam. And what happens there is the air in the canner is replaced by steam. And then we'll put the weight right here, like this, to hold everything in, and then the pressure starts to build, and it will build up to 13, and then we manage the heat underneath to keep it between 13 and 15. Now, if this starts to jiggle, because this is a 15-pound weight, and this by that time should also read 15, this acts as a check for the dial gauge. But as long as it is not going or faster, then we know that we're between 13 and 15 and we can just hold it right there. So I'm going to set the canner aside and we're going to get busy with the fish. In the home in which I grew up, my dad loved salmon, and he always bought canned salmon from the grocery store in cans. Mother never canned fish at all. In fact, she never did any pressure canning. She did some pressure cooking. She'd cook potatoes and make mashed potatoes for dinner in a pressure cooker, but never any pressure canning. I started pressure canning as a young married and have been doing it ever since, and have found home canned salmon beats grocery store canned salmon all to heck. It is fantastic. We just had, this may be my last jar. I might have one more jar out there, which is why we're doing another batch and building it up again. We always do salmon in about 10-pound increments, in other words, in small batches. So you'll notice that the skin is to the outside, and you will also notice that it has liquid in the jar. We will not be putting any liquid in the jar. The processing of the salmon itself released this liquid, and so the liquid amount may vary, and it does vary according to the chunks of fish that we put in there, and so sometimes we just drain that off. We had salmon cakes a couple of days ago. What did you think, Jim?
I thought they were really good.
Oh, they were just finger-licking good. Well,
you're mixing.
I'm mixing. Not mixing proteins. Metaphor, mixing proteins. That's right. But it was really fantastic. We enjoyed it very much.
Chicken of the sea.
True. And we use this salmon in salads. In fact, when I was still working at the university, I would just open up a jar and take about half of it and put it in one of my refrigerator, my lunch boxes, and put some lemon in with it and just eat it plain, just right out of the jar. It was really, really good. So we very much appreciate having salmon on our shelves. Salmon is a wonderful food. We just did a video on 7 foods that help you maintain a healthy blood sugar. Salmon was at the top of the list. And so it's very nutritious. It has omega-3 fatty acid in it, as well as wonderful protein. And so it helps keep our blood sugar steady throughout the day when we have salmon. So I have one of our packages stretched out here with both fillets, and I just found a little bone sticking up, so I just pulled it. But bones are okay. Don't need to worry about bones. After they're processed, the bones, if you've eaten canned salmon before, you know that the bones can just be consumed. They're just fine. They're a little bit crunchy, but very soft and won't hurt you. And so what we need to do now is to cut these fillets so that they will fit nicely in a pint jar, leaving 1-inch space. Now you can either use a ruler and measure, but what I do is I just put my jar up here. Okay, so, and please know that I wash my hands constantly. I just did a minute ago. I generally do not show it on our camera. That's valuable camera time. And so I just don't think it's necessary for me to show you that I wash my hands frequently. But know that I do. Okay, now to fill the jar, we roll the salmon so that the meat is on the inside, skin is on the outside, and we just put it right down there in that jar. And notice how perfectly it fits with 1 inch of head space left. So I'm going to take another piece and put it in, rolling it and poking it. And now there's kind of a hole in the middle. Well, I have a little tail piece right here that I can just poke right down in there. And now we have a full jar of salmon, and that's all there is to it. So, jar number 2. Skin to the jar. And down inside. So there's another one. We might get 6. All right, we have a little hole in the middle, so I'm going to have to open up the other package. So I'm going to continue this, wash my hands again, and we'll be back when our jars are finished. Well, we got 5 full pints, and then this one is a little bit lacking. I'm going to can it anyway. It will be just fine. So we really have about 5.5 pints. There's no liquid that we're going to put in here, so the next thing to do is to just wipe the rims very carefully. The reason that we wipe the rims is to make sure there is particularly no oil of any kind on them, but any food that might prevent a good vacuum seal. So, lids go on. Lids have been cleaned. These jars and lids are room temperature because the only method we can use, according to the USDA, is raw pack. And the salmon came out of the refrigerator right before I brought it to show the video in the video, and so it was cold. And so that is another reason why we're going to be processing for 100 minutes according to the USDA. And now I'm going to put this on finger tight, which means that I'm just using my fingers to tighten. I'm not getting my wrist or my arm involved. So just finger tight. The reason that we do finger tight is so that when the contents on the inside of the jar heat up to the boiling point and above, these will be going up to about 240 degrees. That's what it takes to kill botulism spores. And I have several videos on botulism if you want to just search our channel and learn a little bit more about that. But the steam that is generated as the fish cooks and processes it will be well above the boiling point, producing steam from the liquid in the salmon. That steam needs to escape outside the jar, and that is what allows us, that as it cools, to form a vacuum. And so it is really important that we don't crank those rings down super tight. Finger tight. All right, so these are now ready to go out to our canner. So I will meet you out there. Well, it's a cloudy day out here, and maybe we'll get a little bit of rain. That would be great. So this is my canning setup. The wooden structure right here is a windbreak so that the flame doesn't blow out when we are processing. But nevertheless, we keep a eagle eye on the temperature all the way through the canning process to be sure that it doesn't dip below 13 pounds and that it's always between 13 and 15. We come out here every 3 or 4 minutes, don't we, Jim?
3, 4, 5, depending upon how stable it is.
Okay, so Jim really, this is what he does, and he does such an excellent job. So come over and take a look on the inside of the canner. You might be able to see little tiny bubbles arising. So it's just barely at a simmer. It's about 180 degrees, and that is exactly the temperature that we want to achieve before we put it's just on the verge of boiling. So let's go ahead and put these in. The water will come up about halfway up these jars, which is just about right. And that will give us enough water to generate steam for the entire 100 minutes. So there they are, water about halfway up the side. All right, now putting the lid on, taking the weight off. We don't want that weight yet. This is the emergency blow valve, which means that if something should happen and we forgot to pay attention and it kept going and going beyond 15, down to 20 or so, this would blow and release the steam. I can tell you in over 55 years of canning, that has never happened to me. And so all you have to do is just follow the instructions in your instruction booklet and you won't ever have that. But it's nice to know that we have that safety issue that prevents the canner itself from exploding. So, phew, no problems. All right, now we are at 0 pressure. I'm going to turn this up just a little bit, get the heat really going, and we'll watch for steam to come out this vent right here. When we get a good stream of steam coming out, sometimes it's hard to see, but we will bring you back when that happens, and then we will time it for 10 minutes. And that steam will work inside the canner to expel all of the air. The air will be coming out with the steam. And after it has done that for 10 minutes, then we can put the weight on to hold that steam inside and build up the pressure to our 13 psi, which is what we want. So I hear it started to boil. So we'll watch for this steam and bring you back so you can see it for yourself. Steam has been venting for almost 10 minutes. It's very hard to see. I brought my mirror, but you can certainly hear it. I brought my mirror out here so we can test, so you can see that indeed steam is coming at a really good clip. It's just the morning light isn't allowing us to do that. So we're going to go ahead and put our weight on, and our dial is already up above 5. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it down. We usually keep it between low and medium, Jim, is that right?
Yeah, somewhere near low.
Somewhere near low to bring it to 15.
It starts to go over 15.
Okay, so as you can see, it's moving toward 10 fairly fast. So we have our canner all set up and ready to go. And just as soon as it gets over here to 13, which is right here, we will start our timing for 100 minutes. Then when the timer is done, we will turn the heat off and walk away from that canner. We're not going to touch it. We're going to let it cool down naturally, which is going to be a little challenging because it's supposed to be over 100 degrees here before too long. So we'll see how long that takes. And so we will probably be bringing you back, if everything goes smoothly, we'll be bringing you back after the whole process has finished and cooled down on its own, when we're ready to open up the canner and remove the salmon. So we will see you then. Finished, and everything went flawlessly. And our pressure is all the way down. The airlock in the back has dropped, and so I know that the pressure is off. Now, if you do not have a dial canner, if instead you have a weighted gauge canner that gives you a choice between 10 pounds pressure and 15 pounds pressure. The recipe will tell you this, but 1,000 feet and below can process at 10 psi, but anything above 1,000 feet has to process at 15. If you have a dial canner and are not at our elevation, check that recipe for what you need to watch for your own pressure. So I'm going to check just to be sure. Yes, no pressure escaping whatsoever. So I'm going to go ahead and open the canner. And I'm opening it away from me. And we will pull out the salmon. All right, it looks great. So this one has juice up to about right here. This was wild-caught Soho salmon. Soho, is that right?
I don't remember.
But it was not farmed. Here's our little one that didn't quite fill, but it looks great. And we did not have any siphoning, which is expected because we didn't start with any liquid in the jars. All right, we're going to take these in the house and stack them up, and I'll see you in there. So I have moved them from that tray onto this rack so that they can cool more evenly. We will allow these to cool right here in the kitchen for several hours the rest of the day. Tonight before I go to bed, they will be completely cooled, and I will be able to put them in some hot soapy water, wash the outsides of the jars, and then I will remove the rings, or I will just loosen the rings. We don't want the rings to be clamped tight. In case one of these jars needs to break seal, we don't want it clamped down. We want it to be able to break seal because that indicates some contamination on the inside that is producing a gas. So we want to be very aware of that. And I think we have sealed, 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 not yet. So we have 5 that have already sealed and 1 not yet. Sounds kind of hollow-ish. So I can also tell, not just by the sound, but I can tell because the lids are
Concave.
concave. Convex is this way, concave is this way.
Concave is that way.
So, okay, so I'm thrilled with these, absolutely thrilled. This will be a wonderful addition to our food storage shelf, and we'll still be looking for more sales because we're down pretty low on salmon, and I want to get beefed up. Well, I want to get salmoned up with the salmon. Oh, Jim is rolling his eyes.
Oh, that's bad.
It was bad. So thank you so much for being with us. I hope you try this salmon, especially if you get the fillets. Nothing is easier. So thanks so much, and we just appreciate so much your viewing our videos. Help spread the word. Subscribe if you have not. You're invited to do so. We would love to have you as part of our community, and we will see you again very soon with more videos.